Ja, kan je introductie ook doen, in principe.
Oké. Oh. Ik krijg hem niet door. Oké, goed. Ja, oké. Oké. Waarom mag je dit plaatje trouwens toevoegen?
Huh?
Had je deze nog voor een reden toe? Oh, yeah, okay. All right, guys, welcome. Sorry. So today we're gonna talk about auxiliary verbs. I'll begin with the homework of last week. So the first sentence of the homework, you had to translate the sentences to Dutch. Can anyone tell me what the translation is for this sentence? And if you didn't do your homework, you can also just try.
I can try.
Yeah, sure.
Peter's zus is langer dan ik.
All right. Very good. Peter zijn zus is langer dan ik. Very good. So the second sentence, I like summer, but I like winter more.
Ik hou van zomer, maar ik hou nog meer van winter.
Okay. Ik hou van de zomer, maar ik hou nog meer van de winter. Of meer van de winter.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good.
Oh, in the first sentence there's actually a small mistake. The possessive in Dutch actually doesn't have an apostrophe. So it should actually be Peter's zus, without the apostrophe. Doesn't really matter.
You could also just say Peter zijn zus.
Yeah.
Which would also be fine. All right. Any takers? The longest days are always the most tiring. Anyone?
Anyone try?
Takers? Can anyone tell me what the longest day would become? The longest days?
I think it could be het langst dagen zijn altijd het meest vermoeiend. But I don't know if I pronounce it well.
Yeah, good. Okay. So, de langste dagen zijn altijd het meest vermoeiend. Very good.
I think someone is clicking on the slides, which changes the order. Try not to do that. It makes it more difficult.
Okay, she has just bought the latest phone. And in the booklet was also a tip. Latest in Dutch would be new.
I can try. Ze heeft net de nieuwste telefoon gekocht.
Very good. Perfect. Okay. The fifth sentence. The Netherlands has almost as many inhabitants as New York.
Or maybe someone else?
Then.
Welcome, Farah.
Any takers?
What's the point? Ulrike, can you, do you have the sentence?
Or try?
Or try? I'm guessing no.
You left. Elizabeth? Do you know?
Oh, okay. That's fair. Fair. Okay.
Ah, okay. No problem. Anyone? Or type it in the chat, also fine if your microphone doesn't work.
What's the word for inhabitants?
Inwoners.
Okay, maybe I can try. Is it het of de Nederlands?
It's just Nederland.
Oh, oké. So Nederland heeft bijna even. What did you say the word was?
Evenveel en dan inwoners.
Ja. Inwoners als New York.
Very good. You could also say bijna zoveel or bijna net zoveel. All right, perfect.
Bijna evenveel.
Yeah. All right, exercise 2. Ulrike, can you type in the chat then? How many credits do you still need to graduate? And then I still need 30, translated to Dutch. Problem is, I also don't know if anyone's typing right now.
No, I was just thinking that you can't see if people are typing. I assume she is. I sure hope so. You can do it, Ulrich.
I don't know. Awesome.
Yes.
All right, and the last part. I still need 30. All right, okay, so it's close. Hoeveel studiepunten heb je nog nodig om af te studeren? Ik heb er nog 30 nodig.
Yes.
So then we get the air part from 2 weeks back.
Yeah, it makes sense that you didn't know that you have to write it as after studeren. That's the next lecture we will talk about.
Yeah. But it would be, ik heb er nog 30 nodig.
Yes.
Because it's
all these sentences have er in it.
refers back to the studiepunten. So the study points. There was a large climate protest in The Hague last month. Any takers?
Maybe just point to someone. Or
Yeah. But sometimes you don't know the name of people. Vera, I think? Do you know the answer? Would like to try to translate the sentence to Dutch?
even if you didn't do your homework.
Yeah, it's fine. You can just try.
And please unmute your mic, because typing a chat will take too long. Or let us know if you don't want to do it. That's also fine.
All right. Anyone else that would like to turn on their microphone and answer the question? Or translate the sentence? Or try it? Or
I can try, but I don't know where to put the. So it would be like without the I would think it's vorige maand was een groot klimaatprotest in Den Haag. But where do I put the
Okay, so you could put it in multiple places. So, oh, sorry, Vera. Yeah, okay. Next time, just put on your microphone. But okay, it would be: er was vorige maand een groot klimaatprotest in Den Haag.
No worries.
But you could also say: vorige maand was er een groot klimaatprotest in Den Haag. So you could put in multiple places.
Okay.
It's okay, Vera.
Ja, or er was in Den Haag een groot klimaatprotest vorige maand.
Yeah.
It kind of depends on the emphasis.
So the sentence that Vera typed would also be correct. Er was een groot klimaatprotest in Den Haag vorige maand.
Mm-hmm.
All right. May I pass? Yes, of course you may pass. Anyone that hasn't been? Elizabeth? Could you turn on your microphone and answer the question?
Yes.
And if your microphone doesn't work, I
Pronunciation.
mean, just let us know. But
Yes.
Right.
Wait. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. I was sick for a bit.
Are you feeling better now?
Yeah. So I went out for the very first time in a month. Me ik pas ja
Of course.
me af
Of course would be what in Dutch?
of what's of course?
Of course. Naturally, sure. What would-
Natuurlijk.
Yeah. So yeah, natuurlijk. And you could say, you could translate the you may. Would be.
Ja, me
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
pas.
Okay. So pas would be erlangs. So you could ask, mag ik erlangs? And then you could say, ja, natuurlijk mag je erlangs. It's a very good try. Nice. All right. Don't worry.
And it is
nothing can go wrong.
in the second sentence it's mag je erlangs instead of je mag erlangs,
Yeah.
because we start with an adverb at the first part. And so we learn in lesson 2 that if you start with an adverb at the start of a sentence, then you invert the finite verb in the subject.
All right. Don't worry. Nothing can go wrong. Can anyone answer the question?
Maak je geen zorgen, er kan niets fout gaan.
Yeah, very good.
Very good. Er kan niks misgaan. Er kan niks fout gaan. All good. Very nice. And the last sentence, he accidentally received a letter with my name on it.
I can try it.
Yeah, perfect.
I don't know how to say accidentally though.
Per ongeluk, I would say.
Oké. Hij kreeg per ongeluk een brief met mijn naam erop.
Yeah, very
Very
good.
good. En je kunt also say, hij heeft per ongeluk een brief ontvangen of gekregen met mijn naam erop.
Yeah, very good.
Perfect. All right. So, the verb of the week this week is weten. But I think Thomas will take over now.
Yeah, sure. Yes, the verb of the week is weten, which, as you know, means to know. Haha. So the conjugation in present simple is ik weet, jij weet, hij, zij, het weet, wij weten, jullie weten en zij weten. And it's irregular in the past simple. So it becomes ik wist, jij wist, hij, zij, het wist, wij wisten, jullie wisten, zij wisten. And in the past participle, it's also irregular, and it becomes ik heb geweten, jij hebt geweten, hij, zij, het heeft geweten, en wij, jullie, zij hebben geweten. So, just to know, knew, and known, respectively. So now you know. That's too much of those. That's the joke. So let's move on to hulpwerkwoorden, auxiliary verbs. Now, what are these things? Het is een werkwoord dat het hoofdwerkwoord helpt. So a verb that helps the main verb in the sentence. The verb that helps the main verb here is the verb that conveys meaning in the sentence. Over the bulk of the meaning. So if I say here ik werk, is the important verb is werken. You can make that future tense and make it ik ga werken. Werken still stays the important verb, the main verb, but ga becomes then the auxiliary verb. And so you've already seen a couple of auxiliary verbs come by, namely to go, of dus gaan, mogen, and hebben en zijn as well. For example, ik heb gewerkt. Here hebben is an auxiliary verb, namely to help convey the present perfect. And so auxiliary verbs take the place of the persoonsvorm or the finite verb in a sentence, and the finite verb becomes an infinitive or a past participle, and they always go at the end of the sentence. So here the bottom example, ik eet morgen een wortel. I eat a carrot tomorrow. You can make that kind of different with adding the auxiliary verb zullen, meaning shall or will. Ik zal morgen een wortel eten. So we can see that here the main verb eten, eat, becomes an infinitive and moves to the back of the sentence. And the auxiliary verb zullen takes in the place of the finite verb. So ik eet morgen een wortel becomes ik zal morgen een wortel eten. Yeah, kind of straightforward in a way. That's also how English works. Only in English the verb doesn't go to the end of the sentence, but will just takes the place after the finite verb. So I eat a carrot. I eat a carrot tomorrow will become I will eat a carrot tomorrow. So the difference is just that in Dutch the infinitive is usually different from the finite verb, and it moves to the back of the sentence instead of next to the finite verb. But otherwise, it should be kind of a recognizable construction. So for word order, again, we just use normal word order, but all the infinitive just joins the other verbs at the end of the sentence. But there is a sort of order to the infinitives. You can't just place them in any sort of random order. And basically the order that you use is that the most important, the more relevant verbs go at the end. And for example, the verb to be able to always gets pushed in front. We will look at how that works. So here het werkwoord kunnen komt als eerste infinitief. So here the sentence is hij had beroofd kunnen worden. Literally translating as he had robbed. Yeah, he could have been robbed. That's the sentence. And in Dutch, you first have the past participle and then the infinitives. And of the infinitives, kunnen always comes first. But we will see a lot of examples of this. The second sentence, de directeur heeft niet zo snel op het probleem kunnen reageren. The director hasn't been able to react to the problem in a fast manner. So the sentence order, and you can see here already that the sentence order in Dutch and English are very different. Because here, kunnen reageren is all pushed to the back, and in English they're all kind of neatly together. And in Dutch, we just pushed all to the back. Only the auxiliary verb remains in the front. This also is the case for sentences. Yeah. This is the case for sentences. Normally we treat sentences in Dutch. It's also the case for questions. So if the second sentence would be a question, namely, it would become, heeft de directeur niet zo snel op het probleem kunnen reageren? Question mark. So then just the auxiliary verb and the subject switch places, and the rest stays the same. Pretty straightforward. Well, as straightforward as Dutch syntax can be. Let's see. Yeah, maybe I'll just do this because I'm talking already. So let's look at some examples of auxiliary verbs, so you can know. This one you've probably seen. It's zullen. In the present tense, that's important. It is translated in English as shall or will. So here, this example sentence is, schat, haal jij de kip uit de vriezer? Zal ik doen. So, honey, will you take a chicken out of the freezer? I will do that. But the other way around, it doesn't always work. So will does not always get translated to zullen. So, for example, this sentence, we will go to Moscow. In Dutch, we say, we gaan naar Moskou. You could also say, we zullen naar Moskou gaan. But that sound is a bit double. So you don't really need that. Because the auxiliary verb to go in Dutch, namely the future tense, also gets translated with will in English. That's why that sometimes doesn't really map one-to-one. But just remember that zullen is shall or will. But there's a lot more other constructions that can happen. For example, in the past tense, it becomes a conditional. Namely, the past tense of zullen in the singular is zou, and in the plural is zouden. So here the question is, zou het gaan regenen? No problem, Justine. Welcome. So here's the question, zou het gaan regenen? Yeah, the best translation would probably be, was it going to rain? But the literal translation would be, would it rain? Or the second one, ik zou erheen gaan. I would go to it, would be the translation in English. So in the past tense, it usually becomes would. And so it doesn't become should, which is the past tense of, no, it's not the past tense. It's not that should is not the past tense of shall, right? Does shall have past tense? Actually don't know. Disregard that. If I don't know that, probably you have it. I think it is. Yeah, I should do that. No, I don't think it is actually. I think it's just a separate. They're related. But in any case, should is quite different from zou. Zou is more like should have. It's probably zou is more like should have. Zou ik dat moeten hebben gedaan? Oh no, zou moeten? No, okay, never mind. We'll get to that. I'm confusing you because this translation thing is also different. Zou is would. Just remember that. Zouden kunnen, that becomes could. So we can not only have one auxiliary verb, we can have multiple. Wow, how fun. So zouden and kunnen. Zouden means would, and kunnen means be able to, and would be able to is also, could also be could, right? So that kind of makes sense. So dat zou kunnen, that could be. Zou je mij dat kunnen sturen? Could you send me that? Or would you be able to send me that? That you could also say that, but in English that's a bit cumbersome. You have a shorter word for that in English. In Dutch we don't. We need to. However, the past tense of kunnen, namely ik kon, wij konden, doesn't always get translated as could. That's more like was not possible, because kunnen is more like can and be possible. So here, het kon niet means it was not possible. But you would never mix zouden with konden, because then you would have two finite verbs in the past simple, and you didn't have that. You only have one finite verb per clause. So you would never have zouden konden. That's weird. Hadden en kunnen becomes could have. So in English, could have is like its own kind of sort of construction, because you can't make a past perfect with to be able to in English. So you couldn't have, I use couldn't have here, like I had, well, no, you could say I had been able to. Yeah, but that means something different. This means I could have done something. So hadden en kunnen means I could have done something. Het had erger kunnen zijn it could have been worse. Yes. This is a practice thing, but I first want to go through a bit more, and then we go back to the practice thing. I think that's more useful. So you've already seen the verb to go used as a auxiliary verb, namely to make the future tense. And this is always translated as to go or going to. We gaan veel eten. We're going to eat a lot. Wanneer gaan we weer iets afspreken? When are we going to meet up again? So gaan always is translated as going to or to go. Usually always if it's an auxiliary verb, you use it as am going to. If it's only in the present simple, you probably would use this I go to the store, for example. But in English, you don't really use the present simple that much. You usually use more the present continuous, which we'll get to in a bit. Let's get here. I reordered these slides. I don't think I did a very good job of reordering them. So allow me to skip ahead a little bit more and go through a bit more auxiliary verbs, and then Milena can tell you about the present continuous, which is useful. So these are some other auxiliary verbs. These are a special class of auxiliary verbs called modal verbs, meaning that they change the modality, or you could say it as the mood of the sentence. So we have an example sentence here. Ik heb een biertje. I have a beer. And we have these 5 modal verbs that we can, or auxiliary verbs that we can add, and this changes the sentence. So the example question sentence would be, heb ik een biertje? Do I have a beer? And we can use the verb kunnen, which we've already seen. Kan ik een biertje hebben? Can I have a beer? We can use the verb moeten, which means must or have to, which becomes, moet ik een biertje hebben? Must I, or do I have to have a beer? It's kind of a strange situation in which you're forced to have a beer, but maybe find better friends if you're in that situation. But could be a sentence. Willen, which means to want, and this is important because willen is usually confused with the English verb will, which means different. Will is zullen in Dutch, and willen in Dutch is to want in English. So wil ik een biertje hebben means do I want to have a beer. And then we have zullen, we already saw. Zal ik een biertje hebben? Shall I or will I have a beer? And then lastly, mogen. And that means may I. So mag ik een biertje hebben? May I have a beer? And I think it is useful because these verbs, together with to have and to be, are the 7 irregular verbs in the present simple in Dutch. So I think it's useful to just once see how they're conjugated, so then you kind of know, well, maybe that you don't instantly know how they are conjugated, but that you can know, okay, they behave a little differently than the other ones. Namely well, some of them are, not all of them are irregular, only kunnen, mogen, and zullen, that you can see here. I will just go through them quickly. So kunnen means can or to be able to. Ik kan, jij kan, or jij kunt, or u kunt, u kan. In the question form, this is only for je, it becomes kun je or kan je. And for hij, zij, het, this is kan, hij kan. En voor wij, jullie en zij, it's just kunnen. Wij kunnen, jullie kunnen, zij kunnen. Moeten, meaning must or have to, literally, is, so it's moeten. The present simple is, the first one is ik moet, jij moet, moet je. Hij, zij, het moet. Wij moeten, jullie moeten, zij moeten. Mogen, de singular form is mag. Ik mag, jij mag, u mag, mag je. En hij, zij, het mag. Wij, jullie, zij mogen. So the vowel is different. For willen, willen is actually regular, but it's usual to see. Ik wil, jij wilt. Oh, it's not regular. U wilt, wil je, because here, hij, zij, het wil. So it's not hij wilt, it is hij wil. So that's useful to know. And wij, jullie, zij, willen. And then lastly, for shall, for zullen, which means shall or will. So willen does not mean will, important. Ik zal, jij zult, or jij zal. U zult or u zal. En u zul of zal je. En dan hij, zij, het zal. En dan wij, jullie, zij zullen. There's a slight difference in meaning between zul and zal, but it's small enough that I don't want to bother you with it here because I'm already telling you so many auxiliary verbs that it might be boring. I want to go back to this exercise, small practice. So I want to ask you to unmute your mic and try to give me a translation of a sentence, or just to tell me, at least if you're not able to give the translation, just tell me which auxiliary verbs you need to use in Dutch. So, we will not allow swearing. How would you translate that in Dutch? I unfortunately don't have the correct thingy here. So we'll just have to do this orally. But I hope you might be able to. So if you know, please unmute your mic. Or if you want, you can also just in the chat type in the correct auxiliary verbs we need to use.
I think zullen is the verb. But I don't know the word, like the full translation.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, indeed, we will not allow swearing. We will become wij zullen vloeken niet toestaan. I think you would say that. I will type it in the chat for you. Wij zullen vloeken niet toestaan. Yes. All right, second. Shall I go first?
Zal ik eerst gaan?
Yeah, very good. Zal ik eerst gaan? Very good. Yeah, shall, translated as zullen. So, perfect. Okay, the third one. You could have applied for a job at McDonald's. Anyone?
We should use hadden and kunnen, but I'm not sure. I don't know the full translation.
Yeah, no, that's indeed good. Hadden en kunnen. Je had voor een baan bij McDonald's kunnen solliciteren. Oké. Je had voor een baan bij McDonald's kunnen solliciteren. Solliciteren means to apply for a job. And here we can see that indeed at the end we have two infinitives, namely kunnen solliciteren, and kunnen goes first. So you wouldn't say je had voor een baan bij McDonald's solliciteren kunnen. Well, that would be understandable. Like people, if they're talking informally, that they would understand that. But in general, kunnen first. And lastly, would that be a good solution? Anyone know the correct auxiliary verb to use here? Oh.
Is it zullen?
Zullen?
Yeah.
Yes. Zullen in the past simple. So it would be, zou dat een goede oplossing zijn?
Yeah.
Yes, because like would is the past simple of will, zou is the past simple of zullen. Indeed. All right. So Milena, could you take over for the rest? the present continuous. Before we do that, questions. These we will do some more practicing a bit. But do you have any questions? Something unclear? How to use them? Where to place them? What their meanings are? Or why you should care in the first place? You know? If you have any questions, you can interrupt us at any time. Right. Yeah. Floor is yours.
All right. So let's see. Oh, good. Okay. All right. You did gaan, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Here.
Okay. So the possessive form would in Dutch be like a form or a version of the present continuous. So we are cycling would be wij zijn aan het fietsen. So we're doing it right now. And the syntax of the sentence would be subject, a form of zijn. So you could just put that in the form for wij zijn or ik ben. So the object, aan het, and then your infinitive verb. So wij zijn aan het fietsen, but you could also say ik ben aan het fietsen. Or if you're calling someone ik ben aan het lopen, and then you could add a time or something where you're going to naar school, for example. So usually you use it in like an explicit sentence or form. So you could say they are lying, zij liegen. But you could also say they are lying right now, zij zijn aan het liegen. So if you're, for example, upset and you're just like, zij zijn aan het liegen, then you could just put some extra emphasis on the fact that they are lying like right now to your face, for example. Ik schilder mijn huis wit, I'm painting my house white. Or ik ben mijn huis wit aan het schilderen, so I'm painting my house white, but at the moment. Which might like be a little bit weird because sometimes you would expect not to use this, but you just put like a little bit more emphasis on it. So there are different words that you could use this for as well. You could use it with staan, liggen, zitten, of lopen. And usually you use it in like an informal way. And they use or emphasize that it's going on right now. So present continuous. Hij zat de hele dag te werken would be he was working all day. Waarom staan jullie te klappen? Why are you clapping like right now? You could also say hij zat te slapen, which would sort of be like translated to he was not paying attention. It's just sort of a saying. You could say hij zat te slapen tijdens de les, but you might not really mean that someone is actually sleeping, because you're technically saying hij zat te slapen tijdens les. He was sleeping during class, but you could also just say that someone was not paying attention. You have like multiple options, so you could say hij liep te schelden, hij zat te schelden, and usually it's like a little bit of a negative. So you could also say loop niet zo te vloeken if you're saying to someone that they shouldn't curse that much, or loop niet zo naar me te staren if someone is staring at you and you're like, don't stare at me. So a few examples. De was hangt te drogen, so the laundry is drying right now. De hond zit te hijgen. The dog is... Good point.
Panting.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Dog is panting. Mijn vader ligt te lezen. My dad is reading. Technically, you would translate literally to my dad is lying down reading, sort of. But you just mean like your dad is reading. Mijn stieftante staat af te wassen. Do you say step-on? That sounds weird. Yeah? Okay. My step-aunt is doing the dishes. So, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I can add like a bit to this. So these auxiliary verbs that we use for the kind of informal present continuous, they are similar to the auxiliary verbs that we use to describe prepositions, namely standing, hanging, lying, sitting. And they don't literally per se mean that they're sitting, but they could standing or walking or hanging or whatever. But they could. So in these example sentences, let's see. So for example, this is the first example sentence. Hij zat de hele dag te werken. Literally, this means he sat working all day. And in Dutch, you could just say hij was de hele dag aan het werken. He was working all day. But in informal language, people just add these small auxiliary verbs to, I don't know, it just sounds a bit more casual. And sometimes it more accurately describes the action. For example, here, if you said he was working all day, yeah, it could be ambiguous. But if you say he sat working all day, then yeah, you also imply that he was sitting. So yeah, in principle, for here, hij liep te schelden. Here, literally, he walked cursing. He walked around cursing. Doesn't literally mean he's walking around. It could mean he's walking around. But also, hij zat te schelden. He was sitting around cursing. Also doesn't really literally mean that he was sitting, but they're both possible. And people use here it says, yeah, it usually has a negative connotation. This is because sometimes you want to tell someone what to do. So give them a command, and you could use the imperative. But you can't use an imperative and a present continuous. So because that would be something like wees niet zo aan het schelden, which sounds very weird. So if you want to say to someone they shouldn't do something, use an imperative. And because you can't really do that with the present continuous, you could use this like in the formal present with an auxiliary verb like sitting or walking, whatever, or lying. And then you would say lopen te. Yeah. So this is a bit kind of strange Dutch way of making language more informal, which we don't expect you, of course, to know immediately how to do. But just so you know that if people are suddenly describing things as sitting, or people as doing actions while walking or sitting or lying, that they just mean that they're doing it at the moment. And not per se that they're doing that while walking, sitting, lying, hanging, whatever. But they might be lying. That is. Think now.
Sorry, I have a question about this hulpverkwoorden. How, maybe I just missed the information, but how do we know which one to use? Like, and because if I'm right, you said that so for example, zitten is to sit, but it's not because we use zitten that the person is actually like sitting down, or so how should we know which one use?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the answer is that it has something to do with their position or movement. It doesn't per se imply that it's precisely that position/movement. So if it says de hond zit te hijgen, so you see a dog and it is here it's sort of implied that the dog is sitting, right? Because you could also say de hond ligt te hijgen or de hond staat te hijgen. Maybe the dog is lying and panting, or the dog is standing and panting. Here it is implied that it's kind of sitting. Mijn vader ligt te lezen. does imply here literally that he is lying and reading. Mijn stieftante staat af te wassen. She is standing and washing up. But it doesn't always do that. For example, here you could say hij liep te schelden or hij zat te schelden. Cursing is not really an activity that's per se bound to some I don't know, physical position. So cursing can be done in many position, and it doesn't really matter what that position is. So you could use both. If in general, if it is like a continuous action, then most often I think it's used lopen. Because
I mean, you could also say the hond loopt te hijgen. And in that case, your host doesn't have to be walking around, but you could just say that it's panting.
Yeah, there is sort of ordering of which ones are more common, or at least like zitten is quite uncommon, and lopen is very kind of common. But I think if you want to construct a sentence with one of these auxiliary verbs, then kind of anthropomorphize the thing that you're looking at, like you could pretend it's a human, and what kind of action would it be doing? So was it sitting, standing, lying, or walking? And walking here is more like used as a vehicle to mean moving, because there's not another auxiliary verb that means like that has the meaning of moving. So if someone...
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Well, okay, thanks.
It's not something that you grasp in one go, but it's good question to ask. Okay, I think if there are any other questions, we'll have a break, and then
I think we have some exercises left, right?
Yeah, we have some exercises. I think maybe we can do those after break, and then we can, because since we have some time left, we are able to put you in groups, and then you can practice together. I think general. So we'll use the extra time that we have left to make up for the time it takes to put you into the okay. And if anyone's mic is not working, please let me know, and or try to fix that in the meantime, because then we can use that information too. Right? And we will take a short break until day 7. Okay. See you in a bit.
Do we want to let them do the exercises with that's in the PowerPoint